The next morning brought an unexpected crisis that would change everything Zara thought she knew about humans. She was reviewing the cultural exchange reports when her communicator buzzed with an urgent priority message. Commander Qian's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. "Zara, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about Lieutenant Torres." 30 minutes later, Zara sat in the commander's temporary office, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Chun paced behind her desk, clearly agitated about something. "I understand you've been working closely with Marcus over the past few days," Chun began without preamble. "Yes, ma'am. The cultural exchange program has been very successful. That's what concerns me." Chun stopped pacing and fixed Zara with a direct stare. "Tell me, has Lieutenant Torres seemed different to you? More interested than he should be?" A chill ran down Zara's spine. "I'm not sure what you mean. Has he been asking unusual questions? Showing excessive curiosity about your species, your physiology, your vulnerabilities?" The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. After everything that had happened, after all the gentleness and protection Torres had shown, was his commanding officer suggesting that it had all been some kind of elaborate hunt? "He's been very professional," Zara managed to say, though her voice shook slightly. Chun sighed and sat down heavily. "Zara, there's something you need to understand about humans. Something we don't usually share with other species because it tends to frighten them even more than our predatory reputation." "What?" "We have appetites that go far beyond food. Humans are hungry creatures, always hungry for something. And when we find something that interests us, something we want to understand or possess or—" Chun paused, choosing her words carefully. "Well, let's just say that human focus can become very intense." Zara's heart was racing now. "Are you saying he's hunting me?" "Not in the way you think. But Marcus has certain tendencies. Even before we arrived at this station, he was obsessed with learning everything he could about the Kaleri. Their language, their customs, their biology. He spent months preparing for this assignment, reading every paper, every report, every scrap of information he could find." "That sounds like professional preparation, does it?" Chun's expression was grim. "He learned to speak your language fluently in 6 weeks. He memorized the genealogies of your ruling families. He can recite Kaleri poetry from memory." "Tell me, does that sound like normal professional interest to you?" Zara's mind raced back through her interactions with Torres. His perfect pronunciation of her language, his knowledge of Kaleri recipes, the way he had sung to the children during the rescue, knowing exactly the right lullabies to calm them. How had he learned all of that so quickly? "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" Zara whispered. "I'm trying to warn you that when humans want something, we don't give up easily. Marcus has developed what can only be called an appetite for your species, for your culture, your people, your way of life, and I'm concerned about what he might do to satisfy that hunger." The word appetite sent terror racing through Zara's veins. After days of thinking she had misunderstood human nature, was she back to being prey after all? "I should go," she said, starting to rise from her chair. "Zara, wait." Chun's voice was gentler now. "I'm not saying Marcus is dangerous. I'm saying he's intense. Humans can become consumed by their interests. And right now, his primary interest is you and your people. Just ... Be careful. Don't let yourself become the object of an obsession." Zara left the meeting in a daze, her mind reeling with fresh fears. Had Torres been manipulating her all along? Had his kindness, his protection of the children, even his gentle manner been nothing more than an elaborate hunting strategy? She avoided him for the rest of the morning, sending messages about scheduling conflicts and prior commitments. But by afternoon, her professional duties demanded that she attend a joint planning session for the upcoming interspecies summit. Torres was already in the conference room. When she arrived, studying a complex chart of cultural protocols, he looked up when she entered, and his smile was as warm as ever. "Zara, I was hoping to see you. I wanted to thank you for yesterday. You were incredible during the rescue." "It's just doing my job," she replied stiffly. Taking a seat as far from him as possible, if Torres noticed her cold demeanor, he didn't comment on it. Instead, he launched into an enthusiastic discussion about the summit preparations. "I've been thinking about the opening ceremony," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "What if we incorporated traditional Kaleri harmony singing with human choral arrangements? I think the acoustic properties of the main auditorium would create this incredible resonance effect." Despite her fear, Zara found herself listening with growing amazement. Torres didn't just know about Kaleri harmony singing, he understood the technical aspects of how their vocal cords produced the layered tones that made their music so unique. He had clearly spent considerable time studying not just their culture, but their actual physiology. "How do you know so much about our vocal structure?" she asked quietly. Torres paused in his explanation, suddenly looking uncertain. I studied the available research. There are some fascinating papers on Kaleri acoustics. Did you know that your vocal cords can produce frequencies that most species can't even hear? You memorized research papers on Kaleri physiology? Not memorized, exactly. I find your people fascinating. The way you've evolved such complex social structures based on harmonic communication, how your art forms integrate multiple sensory experiences. Torres trailed off, seeming to realize how his enthusiasm might sound. "I'm sorry. I know I can get a bit obsessive about subjects that interest me." There was that word again, obsessive. Chun had warned her about human obsessions, human appetites that went beyond the physical. But looking at Torres now, seeing the genuine passion in his eyes as he discussed Kaleri culture, Zara began to wonder if she was misunderstanding something fundamental once again. "Torres," she said carefully, "Commander Chun warned me that humans can become focused on things they want. That you have appetites beyond food?" Torres went very still. "She said that?" "She said you've been obsessed with learning about the Kaleri. That you spent months preparing for this assignment, learning everything you could about us." For a long moment, Torres didn't respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and careful. "What do you think that means, Zara?" "I don't know. That's what frightens me." Torres was silent for several more moments, staring down at his hands. When he looked up again, there was something vulnerable in his expression. "You're right," he said finally. "I am obsessed with the Kaleri. I've been for years, ever since I first read about your species in my xenobiology classes. But not in the way you think." "Then explain it to me." Torres stood and walked to the conference room's large viewport, staring out at the stars beyond. "Humans do have intense appetites, Zara. We hunger for things that most species don't even think about. But it's not what your stories say it is? What do we hunger for?" "Knowledge, understanding, connection." Torres turned back to her, his expression earnest. "When we find something beautiful, something meaningful, we don't just want to observe it from a distance. We want to understand it completely. We want to learn everything about it. We want to—" He struggled for the right words. "We want to become part of it." Zara stared at him. "I still don't understand." "Let me ask you something," Torres said, returning to his seat but maintaining eye contact. "Why do you think humans are the only known species to domesticate other animals?" "Because you're predators." "You enslaved other species for food and labor?" Torres shook his head. "That's not domestication, that's exploitation." "True domestication is different. It's a partnership. We don't just take from the species we domesticate, we give back. We protect them, care for them, help them thrive. Over thousands of years, we've formed bonds with dozens of species on Earth." "I don't see what that has to do with everything," Torres interrupted gently. "Humans don't just want to understand other species intellectually. We want to form connections with them. We want to be accepted by them. We want to find our place in their world." The pieces were starting to come together in Zara's mind, but she was afraid to voice what she was thinking. Torres seemed to sense her confusion and continued. "When I studied Kaleri culture, I wasn't studying you like a scientist studies bacteria under a microscope. I was studying you like a human studies a new home. I wanted to understand how I could fit into your world, how I could be worthy of your trust and friendship. You wanted to be accepted by us? More than that. Tora's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I wanted to belong with you. The confession hung in the air between them like a bridge across a vast chasm. Zara felt her understanding of the situation shift completely. You're not hunting us? She said slowly. No, you're trying to join us. Torres nodded, his expression hopeful but cautious. The human appetite that frightens other species isn't for conquest or consumption. It's for belonging. We're a social species that evolved in groups, and when we encounter other intelligent beings, our instinct isn't to dominate them, it's to find ways to become part of their community. But the stories about human aggression are true when we're threatened or when Zara pressed her thin blue fingers against the cool metal wall of the observation deck, watching the massive human transport ship dock with their station. Her heart hammered in her chest like a broken engine, each beat sending waves of terror through her small frame. The other Kaleri around her whispered in hushed tones, their large silver eyes reflecting the same fear that consumed her thoughts. They're here, someone whispered behind her. The humans are actually here. Zara's people, the Kaleri, had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the stories. Humans were the apex predators of their homeworld, a planet so violent and dangerous that it had forged the most terrifying species the galaxy had ever known. They ate meat. They hunted for sport. They had evolved from creatures that chased down their prey across vast distances until their victims collapsed from exhaustion. The worst part was their eyes. Forward-facing, like all predators. When a human looked at you, they weren't just seeing you, they were measuring you, calculating, planning. Zara shuddered and pulled her thin arms around herself. At barely 4 feet tall with her pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes, she knew exactly what she looked like to a predator. Small, weak, easy, the docking clamps, engaged with a metallic thud that resonated through the station's hull. In a few minutes, the first humans would step aboard Kepler Station, and everything would change. The Galactic Council had finally approved their membership, despite the protests of dozens of species. The humans had proven themselves valuable allies in the recent conflict with the Void Swarm, but that didn't make them any less terrifying. Zara, you need to get to your post, her supervisor. Malik approached with his usual calm demeanor. The tall, gray-skinned Zentari seemed unbothered by the arrival, but then again, his people were one of the few species that didn't have to worry about being seen as prey. You're assigned to the cultural exchange program, remember? Zara's stomach dropped. I can't. Please, Malik, assign someone else. Anyone else. The assignments are final. Besides, you're the best linguist we have. You speak 12 different languages fluently, and your specialty is in bridging cultural gaps. The humans specifically requested someone with your skills. They requested me? The words came out as a squeak. Not you specifically, but your qualifications? They want to understand our customs, and we need to understand theirs if we're going to work together. The docking bay doors hissed open, and the sound carried through the station's corridors. They were here. Zara forced herself to breathe. She had trained for this. She was a professional. She could handle a simple cultural exchange program, even if it meant spending time with the galaxy's most notorious predators. The first human to step through the airlock was not what she expected. He was tall, yes, but not as massive as the story suggested. His skin was a warm brown color, and his dark hair was neatly trimmed. He wore a simple blue uniform with various patches and insignia that Zara didn't recognize. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, those forward-facing predator eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Commander Sarah Chun, the human woman, behind him announced herself to the waiting delegation. She was smaller than her companion, with straight black hair pulled back in a practical style. Her movements were precise, economical. Like a hunter, Zara thought. Welcome to Kepler Station, Administrator Velcris, a dignified Centaurian, stepped forward. We're honored to host the first human delegation in this sector. Commander Chun smiled, and Zara had to suppress another shudder. Humans showed their teeth when they were pleased. It was deeply unsettling. "Thank you for the warm welcome. This is Lieutenant Marcus Torres," she gestured to the man beside her. "He'll be heading up our cultural exchange program along with your representative." All eyes turned to Zara, who felt her knees go weak. She managed to step forward on unsteady legs, her small frame dwarfed by the humans before her. "I'm Zara Villani," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake too much. "I'll be your liaison during your stay." Lieutenant Torres crouched down slightly to bring himself closer to her eye level, and Zara fought the urge to run. This was it. The predator was sizing up his prey. "It's an honor to meet you, Zara," he said, and his voice was surprisingly gentle. "I've read about your work in xenolinguistics. Your paper on tonal variations in Centaurian diplomacy was fascinating." Zara blinked. You've read my work?" "Of course. We wanted to understand who we'd be working with. Your research on cross-species communication is exactly what we need for a program like this." Commander Chun nodded in agreement. "Lieutenant Torres has a similar background in anthropology and linguistics. We thought you'd make a good team." The word team sent another spike of fear through Zara. Working closely with a human meant constant exposure to those predator instincts. But she nodded anyway, not trusting her voice. The welcome ceremony continued, with various station officials exchanging pleasantries with the human delegation. Zara noticed how the humans moved through the crowd. They were always aware of their surroundings, their eyes constantly scanning. Even when they smiled and made conversation, there was something beneath the surface. Something watchful. After the formal greetings, Lieutenant Torres approached her again. "Would you like to show me around? I'd love to see the station from a local perspective." "Of course," Zara managed. "Where would you like to start?" "Wherever you think would be most interesting. I'm here to learn about your culture, after all." As they walked through the station's main corridors, Zara found herself stealing glances at the human beside her. He moved with a fluid grace that reminded her of the hunting cats from her homeworld, but his demeanor remained friendly and curious. He asked questions about the architecture, the population, the various species that called the station home. So many different worlds represented here. He observed as they passed a group of crystalline Silurians conversing in their musical language. "How do you manage all the different cultural needs?" "It's challenging," Zara admitted, relaxing slightly as they focused on her area of expertise. "Each species has different dietary requirements, social structures, even different concepts of personal space. The Centaurians need high humidity, while the Draconis prefer it dry. The Calari, like myself, are vegetarian, while others ... She trailed off, realizing she was about to mention carnivorous species. "While others eat meat," Torres finished gently. "Like humans." Zara's step faltered. "Yes, does that bother you?" The direct question caught her off guard. Most species danced around such topics with careful diplomacy. It's not my place to judge other species' dietary needs, but it does make you uncomfortable." They had stopped walking now, standing in a quiet section of corridor near one of the observation windows. Torres turned to face her fully, and Zara found herself trapped by those predator eyes. "A little," she admitted quietly. "Why?" The question was simple, but Zara struggled to answer. How could she explain the bone-deep terror that came with being near an apex predator? How could she tell him that every instinct in her body screamed at her to run whenever he looked at her? "Your people are intimidating," she said finally. "You're hunters, predators, my people are prey." Torres was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "I can understand how that would be frightening. But Zara, may I tell you something about humans?" She nodded, though part of her didn't want to hear what came next. "We may have evolved as hunters, but that's not all we are. Yes, we eat meat, but we also cultivate plants. We domesticated animals not just for food, but for companionship. We're social creatures who form bonds across species lines. That predator instinct you're afraid of? It's also the instinct that makes us fiercely protective of those we care about." "But you still hunt? You still kill?" "Sometimes. When necessary." But most humans go their entire lives without hunting anything more dangerous than a grocery store special. He smiled, and this time Zara noticed that it didn't reach his eyes the same way. We're not the monsters the stories make us out to be. They resumed walking, but Zara's mind was spinning. Everything she'd been told about humans painted them as ruthless killers who saw other species as either threats or food. But Torres seemed genuinely kind, even gentle. Was it possible the stories were wrong? As they toured the station's cultural district, Torres showed genuine interest in everything she showed him. He listened carefully to her explanations about the different species' customs, asked thoughtful questions, and even attempted to pronounce words in various languages when she taught him basic greetings. Your people have such beautiful art, he said as they stood before a Kylari crystal sculpture that captured light and split it into dancing rainbows. The way this captures the emotional resonance of the moment, it's breathtaking. Zara found herself smiling. You can read the emotional resonance? Not exactly read it, but I can feel something. Joy, maybe. Hope. Renewal, Zara corrected. It represents the moment when winter ends and spring begins on Kellara Prime, when the ice melts and the first flowers bloom. Torres stared at the sculpture for a long time, his expression distant. We have something similar on Earth. The end of winter is always a time of hope for us, too. After months of cold and darkness, the first warm day feels like a miracle. You have seasons like ours? Very similar. Long winters, Butte. The next few days passed in a strange mixture of fascination and terror for Zara. Torres proved to be unlike any human she had ever imagined. Yet, every now and then, she caught glimpses of something that reminded her exactly what his species was capable of during their second day together. They were reviewing dietary requirements for the upcoming interspecies conference when Torres casually mentioned that he hadn't eaten anything substantial in over 36 hours. 36 hours? Zara dropped her datapad in shock. How are you even functioning? Torres looked up from his own notes, seemingly puzzled by her reaction. It's not that unusual. Humans can go quite a while without food when necessary. I've gone longer during field missions. But don't you get hungry? The concept was alien to Zara. Her people needed to eat small portions every few hours to maintain their metabolism. Of course I get hungry. I'm hungry now, actually. He said it so matter-of-factly that it sent a chill down Zara's spine. But hunger is just another sensation. You learn to work through it. Zara stared at him, her mind racing. She had read about human endurance, their ability to pursue prey across vast distances, but hearing it described so casually was deeply unsettling. The way he spoke about hunger as something to be ignored, overcome, conquered. It was the mindset of a creature that had evolved to outlast its prey. I should probably eat something before the afternoon sessions, Torres continued, still focused on his datapad. Don't want to be distracted during the Zentari cultural presentation. The casual way he discussed his own predatory needs made Zara's skin crawl, but she forced herself to remain professional. There are several restaurants on level 7. I could show you. Actually, I brought some provisions from the ship. Standard rations. They're not much to look at, but they're efficient. Torres gathered his materials and stood. Would you like to join me? I'd be interested in hearing more about Kylari dietary customs. The invitation terrified her, but professional curiosity won out over fear. She followed Torres to his temporary quarters, noting how Spartan they were. The room contained only the basic furnishings, along with a few personal items that seemed carefully chosen for their practicality rather than comfort. Torres retrieved a small package from his belongings and opened it to reveal what looked like dense, dark bars. They didn't look particularly appetizing, but Torres broke off a piece and began eating without ceremony. These are military rations, he explained between bites, designed to provide maximum nutrition in minimum space. They taste like cardboard, but they'll keep you going for days. Zara watched him eat, disturbed by the methodical efficiency of it. There was no pleasure in the act, no enjoyment. It was purely functional, like refueling a machine. Do you ever eat for pleasure? Torres paused, a piece of ration bar halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I mean, eating because you enjoy the taste, or the social aspect, or just because something looks appealing. My people have festivals centered around food preparation. Cooking is considered an art form. Oh, Torres looked down at his ration bar with what might have been embarrassment. Yes, of course. When I'm not on duty, I enjoy cooking quite a bit, actually. It's relaxing. You cook? I know it's surprising, coming from what most species consider a predatory race. But humans have been cooking for thousands of years. It's one of the things that sets us apart from other Earth predators. Despite her fear, Zara found herself curious. What do you like to cook? Tora's expression brightened. All sorts of things. My grandmother taught me to make traditional Mexican dishes, complex sauces that take hours to prepare, bread that needs to rise overnight. And I've learned techniques from other worlds too. Centaurian spice blending, Silurian crystalline preparations. You cook food from other species? Why not? Food is one of the best ways to understand a culture. When you prepare someone's traditional dishes, you start to understand how their minds work, what they value, how they see the world. Zara stared at him in amazement. The idea of a human apex predator spending hours carefully preparing food from prey species was so contrary to everything she'd been taught that it left her speechless. I'd love to cook for you sometime, Torres continued. I mean, if that wouldn't make you uncomfortable. I have some Kaleri recipes I've been wanting to try. You know Kaleri recipes? I studied them before coming here. Part of the cultural preparation. Your people have some fascinating techniques for bringing out the natural flavors in plant proteins. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Zara's communicator. Emergency in Docking Bay 7, came the dispatcher's voice. All available personnel report immediately. Torres was on his feet before the announcement finished, his casual demeanor instantly replaced by sharp alertness. What's in Docking Bay 7? It's one of the cargo bays, Zara said, checking her datapad. Currently housing a shipment of ... Her blood went cold? Oh no, what? Kaleri young ones. It's a school transport that docked this morning. They're here for an educational visit. Torres was already moving toward the door. Then we need to get down there now. They raced through the station's corridors, joining a stream of security personnel and emergency responders. As they approached Docking Bay 7, the sound of frightened voices reached them, the high, melodic cries of terrified Kaleri children. The scene that greeted them was chaos. A mechanical failure had caused a partial atmosphere leak in the bay, and while emergency systems had sealed the breach, the sudden pressure change had caused several pieces of cargo to break loose. Heavy containers were scattered across the bay floor, and somewhere in the maze of debris, 30 young Kaleri were trapped. Structural integrity is holding, the chief engineer reported to the growing crowd of responders. But we can't use heavy equipment to move the debris. Too much risk of causing another breach. What about cutting tools? Asked the security officer. Same problem. The heat could weaken the hull plating. Zara pushed through the crowd to get a better look at the situation. The cargo containers were massive, each one weighing several tons. Moving them by hand would require dozens of workers, but the confined space made it impossible to get that many people in position. How long can they survive in there? Torres asked quietly. Maybe an hour before the air runs out, the engineer replied grimly. Torres studied the debris field with those sharp predator eyes, his expression calculating. What's the lifting capacity of a Kaleri adult? About 50 kilograms in Earth gravity, Zara answered, confused by the question. And the average weight of a Kaleri child? 20 kilograms, maybe 25? Torres nodded and began removing his uniform jacket. I need someone to clear a path to that opening, he said, pointing to a gap in the debris pile that was barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. Sir, that's not safe, the security chief protested. Those containers aren't stable. If they shift, then we need to move fast. Torres was already kneeling down, testing the stability of the nearest container. I can fit through that gap. Once I'm inside, I can lift the children up to the opening. Someone smaller and faster than me can carry them out? All eyes turned to Zara. She was the smallest adult present, and her species' natural agility made her the obvious choice. "I'll do it," she said, though her voice shook slightly. "Zara, you don't have to," Torres began. "Yes, I do," she squared her small shoulders. "They're my people." What followed was the most terrifying hour of Zara's life. Torres squeezed through the narrow opening in the debris pile, disappearing into the darkness beyond. For long minutes, she could hear only muffled sounds and the occasional reassuring word in heavily accented Kaleri as he found the trapped children. Then his voice called out, "First one coming up." A small blue face appeared at the opening, a young girl, no more than 6 years old, her large silver eyes wide with terror. Gentle hands lifted her up toward the gap, and Zara reached in to take her. "It's okay," Zara whispered in their native language as she pulled the child to safety. "You're safe now." The process repeated again and again. Torres, working in the cramped darkness below, would locate another child, calm them with quiet words, and then lift them up to safety. His strength was incredible. He was single-handedly lifting children who would have required mechanical assistance for most species. But it was his gentleness that truly amazed Zara. Through the opening, she could hear him talking to the children in their own language, his pronunciation careful and respectful. He sang to them when they cried, told them stories when they were afraid, and never once showed any sign of frustration or impatience despite the growing danger. 12, Zara counted as she passed another rescued child to waiting arms. 18 more to go, Torres called up. "How are we doing on time?" 30 minutes, the engineer reported. Torres didn't respond, but Zara could hear him moving more quickly now. The containers above groaned ominously with each movement, reminding everyone how precarious the situation had become. 15. Another small face appeared at the opening. As the rescue continued, Zara began to understand something about Torres that all her studying of human nature had missed. Yes, he was strong. Yes, he was capable of violence when necessary. But watching him work with infinite patience and care to save children who weren't even his own species revealed something else entirely. He was protect.